Today's headline is a true story of ghosts in wartime. Have you an explanation for it? The subheadline says, "This is a perfectly true story, and is told here for the first time. Whether or not the experts of the Society for Psychological Research will accept its ghosts as real ones remains to be seen." It says, in the spring of 1865, we were living in an inland town in North Carolina. It was crowded with refugees from all parts of the South, and when Sherman came to Columbia, South Carolina, there came a large contingent from those parts seeking shelter from the storms of war. Confederate money was no longer of any value. The season was late and cold. Food was scarce, and supplies of country produce could only be obtained by barter with the farmers. But we shared what we had and helped each other as best we might. We owned a good cow, and she was our mainstay. Flour was seldom to be bought. We lived on bread made from cornmeal. One day, I bought some loaves of bread at the one baker's shop still open for custom. Little half-size loaves, made of second-rate flour, and when the boy brought them, I received them myself. I knew the boy and noticed something unusual in his manner. "What is it, Billy?" I asked. "Why, ma'am," said he, "I don't know that it's any of my business, but do you know them ladies that live at the corner of Bank Street in 2 rooms of Mr. Brown's old house?" "No, what of them?" I asked. "Starving and alone." Billy's honest blue eyes filled with tears. "I'm afraid they're just starving to death. I take 'em one of these loaves every morning, and I do believe that's all they have to eat. This morning, the one who came to the door fell down in the passage. She was that weak. She did look awful." Billy choked and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Thank you, Billy," said I. "I'm glad you told me, and I'll go over there right away." Bill, his mind relieved, tried to whistle as he went down the street, and I went immediately to investigate his story. It was only about a square away. The window shutters were closed. It looked like an empty house. I knocked. No response. Again I knocked, more loudly. All was still. I tried the door. It yielded, and I went in. There was a little square vestibule with 2 doors opening from it. One of these stood open. Going into the room I saw. Were they free women or free specters? One lay on a sort of couch. The other 2 sat upright on hard wooden chairs. There was no other furniture in the room. They looked at me. Only their eyes seemed alive. "Excuse me," I began. "I heard there was someone ill here, and I came to see if I could be of use." They all 3 seemed to try to speak, but only one found any voice. She said in a hoarse whisper, "Thank you. My sister is not at all well today." Their daily loaf. On the windowsill was the mean, hard loaf of bread, unbroken. I could not stand it. "Oh, my dear," I stammered in my eagerness, the tears streaming from my eyes. "I will run home and bring you something to help you." I ran swiftly home, sent for the doctor, and in 10 minutes was back again with food and such restoratives as I could furnish. The doctor and I worked hard over them. They had so nearly slipped out of life that they could make no effort to live. But at last they began to improve, and progress was rapid. They were real ladies. One saw that by their way of accepting what was done for them, and everyone wanted to help once their needs were known. This was their story. Their father was a wealthy cotton planter from the South Carolina coast. They had been forced to leave their beautiful home early in the Civil War, and it had been made a refuge for the blacks who flocked to that vicinity. They went to Charleston. Their only brother was a Confederate officer, and when their father died in 1863, the 3 sisters were left helpless and forlorn. They went to Columbia and obtained positions to sign Confederate Treasury notes. On the pittance they received, and the sale now and then of a piece of silver or jewelry, they managed to exist until Sherman burned Columbia. Then they fled to North Carolina. The only valuable they had left was a gold snuff box with a miniature set in brilliants on the lid, which had been brought from France by a Huguenot ancestor. Unfortunately, they fell into the hands of an unscrupulous man who knew as they did not of the fall of Richmond, and who gave them what seemed to them a fortune in Confederate money for their snuff box. The next day, they learned that the money was utterly valueless. Their efforts to find the man who had cheated them were of course in vain, and they resigned themselves to starvation. Lost their pittance. They were comparatively young women, all 3 under 40 years of age, but grief, loneliness, and starvation had made them haggard and gray, with sunken cheeks and white lips. Their own mother would not have known them. Well, as soon as it was possible, we begged them to leave their comfortless rooms and visit among us until their brother, from whom they had heard, came to claim them. At first they seemed reluctant, but it was finally so arranged. Annette, the youngest, was my guest, and this was what she told me. "When we first began to live on a bit of bread and a glass of water each day, we were strong and well, and for some days we felt no ill effects. Then we began to feel weak and drowsy, and at times were in great pain. Then we began to see all around us the spirits of the dead. They saw ghosts. We saw our father and mother, the little sisters and brothers we scarcely remembered, and many other friends and relatives. Besides these were some that we did not know at all. No, they did not speak to us. I can't exactly explain it, but there was a sort of thought transference. We knew they loved us and sympathized with us. We never felt afraid or even awed by their presence. It seemed perfectly right and natural for them to be there. Sometimes they would all go away, but our father and mother were there nearly always, by night and day. Yes, we saw them as well in the day as in the night. Sometimes when we were in pain, they hovered around us and waved their hands in a sort of rhythmical measure. Then we were soothed and generally fell asleep. We thought we were going to die, and to have them there was the greatest comfort you can imagine. When you came and knelt by my sister feeding her, my mother laid her hands on your head and blessed you. No, I do not see them now, but I shall always believe that they are near. Our long fasting made the veil of flesh so thin and transparent that we could see them as they are. Their brother came, a fine manly fellow, and they went to South Carolina to try to recover some remnants of their once great estate. I hear from them sometimes. I have often thought I should like to try the experiment of long fasting to find out if I too could see ministering spirits, but I have not the courage. Perhaps it may be so. Who knows? This article was written by Francis M. Butler. This story came from the great state of Maryland, being reported in the Sun of July 5th, 1908. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.